At dawn, on a cedar fence slick with frost, the hawk sits so still you almost miss the breath moving under its feathers. And that's your first warning, beloved one. Stillness is not softness. Stillness can be a blade waiting in plain sight. You need to understand that about the hawk before you understand anything else. While everybody else is busy flapping, panicking, proving, this bird is reading the whole field. From high above, it can pick out something tiny on the ground that your eyes would never catch. Because it sees farther, cleaner, sharper. Number one, the creature is built for clarity. Each eye carries a dense field of photoreceptors, and even the shape of its sight gives it depth that makes the world look carved instead of flat. That means the hawk does not guess, it studies, it measures, it knows what matters and what does not. And that should tell you something about your own life, because a lot of people are running on noise, while the ones who survive are the ones who see. You ever notice how the hawk does not rush the moment? It can stay perched and motionless for long stretches, feathers tight against the wind, head turning just a little as it watches the ground below. That is not waiting out of fear. That is waiting with purpose. The silence is doing work. The quiet is gathering truth. And if you think that sounds slow, listen close, because the sky itself helps it move. The hawk rides rising thermals, those warm columns of air you cannot see, and climbs without wasting a wing beat. One moment it is fixed to a post. The next it is circling higher and higher, surveying miles of land like it already owns the answer. That's the part people miss. Its power is not only in the dive, it's in the height. So if you've been feeling overlooked, underestimated, or like you've had to keep your mouth shut while everybody else made noise, remember this bird. It does not beg to be noticed. It waits, it watches, and then it moves when the moment is clean. And there's one more thing about the hawk that changes everything. But I'm not giving you that yet. If this speaks to you, subscribe and stay with me. And that hidden part is where this bird stops looking impressive and starts feeling almost unfair. Number two, it is not just seeing more than you. It is seeing differently. Inside each eye are two foveas, not one like yours. And that matters more than most people realize. One helps lock on to what is directly ahead, while the other helps track movement out in the distance. So when the bird turns its head in that small, measured way, it is lining the world up with a level of detail that would make most creatures nervous if they understood it. You and I look over a field and see patches of brown, some grass bending, maybe a stone, maybe a shadow. The hawk reads layers. It reads depth. It reads distance. It reads the slight twitch in a place that was pretending to be still. So they can glide over open land with cold patience, while everything below thinks it still has time. This is what people miss when they only admire the wings. The real authority sits in the eyes. And then there is the part that almost feels like a secret written into daylight. Some of these birds can see ultraviolet light. Let that settle on you for a second. There are trails in the world that your eyes were never built to notice. Faint marks left behind, traces crossing grass and stone, signs that look like nothing to you but stand out to that hunter as clear as chalk on dark wood. A mouse may think it vanished. A vole may believe the path is gone, but the field has been speaking the whole time, and the bird can hear it with sight. That is why calm creatures are so unsettling to those who live by hiding. Because some forms of clarity do not need noise, questions, or chasing. They just need the right kind of eyes. Watch the hawk when the morning sun gets low and thin across the ground. The weeds shine silver at the edges. Frost loosens into damp earth. Somewhere below, a trail is glowing in a language only that hunter can read. And while everything small down there trusts its own cover, the one above is not guessing, not hoping, not searching blind. It already has the line. So the next time you mistake quiet for emptiness, remember what may be happening in that silence. Because we have not even touched what the bird does once the whole map comes into focus. And that is exactly why the next move feels so holy. Because after seeing all of that, the bird still does not hurry. Number 3, its patience is not empty time. It is active power. You can find it on a bare branch, on the cracked top rail of a fence, on a telephone pole warmed by the late sun, perched and motionless so long that the whole scene starts to forget it is there. Wind brushes the breast feathers. A dry leaf scrapes over dirt below. Light shifts across the field, inch by inch, and still, it stays. Now hear me clearly, chosen one. They think movement means control. They think noise means authority. They think the first one to react is the first one to win. The hawk rebukes all of that just by remaining still. It does not waste itself proving awareness. It does not scatter its strength chasing every rustle. It lets the ground reveal which sound matters. That kind of waiting unsettles the world beneath it. Not because the bird is doing something dramatic, but because it is not. There is no frantic circling low, no sloppy guessing, no desperate correction, just a hard little silhouette against the sky, head angled, body quiet, claws locked around weathered wood. And while everything smaller below is trusting the grass, trusting the brush, trusting habit, the watcher above is measuring intervals, not seconds, but openings. This is where people misunderstand restraint. They call it delay. They call it hesitation. But in this creature, restraint is part of the hunt itself. The pause narrows the field. The stillness filters distraction. The longer it waits, the less confused the picture becomes. What looked crowded a moment ago begins to separate. What looked hidden starts to betray itself with one careless twitch, one broken line in the stems, one path taken a little too often. And when that happens, the entire posture changes so slightly you could miss it. The shoulders settle, the neck draws in, the air around the bird seems to tighten with decision. That is the difference between being late and being ready. So if you have ever wondered why this hunter can sit through gusting wind, cold rain, and long stretches of nothing, it is because the stillness was never nothing at all. It was the sorting. It was the narrowing. It was the moment before truth stopped hiding. And once the ground gives itself away, the next thing that happens is so fast, the sky almost looks torn. And when that moment breaks open, it does not look loud first. It looks exact. Number 4. The strike is not chaos. It is a single, precise dive shaped by everything that came before it. The body tips forward from the post, wings fold in tighter, air slides past the feathers with a dry, rushing sound, like cloth pulled fast through a hand. One heartbeat ago, the bird was a still mark against the pale sky, and now it is cutting downward through cold light with no wasted motion at all. This is where they get it wrong. They think power is proven by constant movement, by showing your hand too early, by making sure everyone sees the effort. But the hawk does not advertise the descent. It does not send warnings. It does not circle low, asking the field to respect it. It commits only when the line is clear, and because of that, the motion feels almost unreal, concentrated, final. Look closely at the shape of it. The tail adjusts by a fraction. The wings open just enough to steer. The head stays locked. That same deep vision, the same hidden map, the same long patience from the branch, all of it pours into one narrow act. This is why the dive lands with such authority. The bird is not deciding on the way down. The decision was already made above. What you are seeing now is execution. And that, beloved, is what unnerves everything beneath it. Because by the time the movement becomes visible, the truth was already settled. The field did not lose in the instant of descent. It lost in the long quiet before it ever noticed it was being read. Even the air seems to know. The grass bends under the pressure of passing wings. Loose seed heads tremble. Dust lifts in a small ring where the ground gives back the impact. Then there is a pause so brief it almost hides inside the sound of the wind. No celebration, no drama, just a creature low to the earth for one measured second, holding the stillness again in a new place. Do you see it? The calm did not end when the bird moved. The calm moved with it. And that is why the next revelation matters more than the dive itself. Because the greatest advantage this hunter carries was never speed alone. It was where it chose to begin. And where it begins is almost always higher than you think. Number 5. This bird does not only conquer the field by looking down on it, it rises above it with help most eyes never notice. When the sun warms the ground, columns of soft, lifting air begin to move upward. You cannot see them. There is no color to them, no shape your hand could grab. But the hawk feels them, leans into them, and starts riding the thermals as if the sky itself opened a hidden staircase. That is one of the coldest lessons in all of nature. It gains height without panic. It climbs without wasting itself. A few slow wing beats, then a glide. Another small adjustment. Then the body is carried higher by something invisible but real. You hear almost nothing from below, except a far rustle in dry grass and the occasional cry cut thin by distance. Meanwhile, the bird keeps widening its circle, and with every turn, the land beneath it gets smaller, clearer, more honest. Now pay attention to the contrast. Everything on the ground is trapped in closeness. Brush against brush, stem against stem, small paths crossing each other. Confusion lives low. But above that mess, the hunter is moving in broad, quiet loops, not chasing, not proving, not announcing anything. It is gaining perspective while others are losing it. That is why they misread calm creatures. They assume no flapping means no progress. They assume stillness means stagnation, and ease means weakness. But the hawk knows something they do not. Height changes information. Once it rises, what looked scattered starts forming patterns. Open patches, shadow lines, feeding trails, the edges where cover ends and exposure begins. All of it starts speaking at once. And there is almost something sacred in that economy. It isn't burning energy to impress the sky. It is borrowing what is already there. Warm air off stone, heat lifting from bare soil, a current no louder than a whisper. While lesser minds spend themselves fighting every inch, this hunter ascends by alignment. That is a word for you too, alignment. Because from up there, the field stops feeling endless. It becomes readable. The same place that protected secrets at ground level starts confessing under altitude. And once the bird has the whole shape of the land under its wings, the next decision is no longer about effort. It is about territory. And that is where this gets even deeper. And territory is where the quiet starts looking even more intimidating. Number 6. This bird does not watch a little patch of earth and call that wisdom. From above, it surveys far more than the frightened creatures below could ever imagine. While riding the thermals, it can drift over open ground, fence lines, brush edges, stony clearings, and narrow trails, all in the same slow sweep. Barely a wing beat, barely a sound. And yet, the whole landscape is being taken in. That matters because range changes confidence. When the hawk climbs, it is gathering authority over space. The same eyes that catch a tiny movement can now compare one corner of the field to another, one patch of shade to the next, one strip of exposed earth against a darker run of cover. What feels huge and confusing down below begins to arrange itself into sections, routes, habits, risks. You can almost see it in the circles. Wide at first, loose and patient, then a little tighter over a place that answers back. Not with words, of course, but with pattern. The bend of dry grass in one direction, a repeated crossing line near low brush, a path that has been used enough times to leave a faint order in the ground. To you, it might still look like randomness. To that hunter, it is a map opening by degrees. And this is the part that rebukes people who only trust what is loud. The field is always speaking, always, through disturbance, through repetition, through shape. But the ones trapped inside it cannot read it because they are too close, too hurried, too buried in their own small roots. The bird above is free from that blindness. Distance is not detachment for it. Distance is revelation. Listen to the world under those wings. Wind humming along the feathers, a dry creak from a branch somewhere below, the hush of warm air lifting through sunlight. Nothing dramatic, nothing begging to be noticed, yet in that almost silence, a whole territory is surrendering information. That is why this creature does not need to chase every opening. It can afford to ignore what is beneath its level. It can pass over noise. It can leave false movement alone. Because once you can read the whole spread of the land, you stop reacting to fragments. And that is where the balance of power shifts. Not at the moment of the dive, not even at the moment of sight, but at the moment one presence knows the field better than the field knows itself. And when one presence knows the field better than the field knows itself, fear starts doing half the work for it. Number 7. This bird does not need everything below to make a mistake, but it knows they usually will. The moment tension enters the air, the ground changes. Grass quivers where it had been lying flat. Leaves twitch out of rhythm. A hidden runner breaks cover a breath too early or freezes in the wrong place, trusting stillness after already giving away movement. The hawk does not create that panic every time. Sometimes it simply waits long enough for panic to create itself. That is what separates calm authority from nervous energy. The creature above remains unreadable. No wild correction, no messy burst, no wasted display. Even after circling high, it can settle again somewhere overlooking the same stretch of earth, quiet as weathered bark. Meanwhile, everything below starts telling on itself. A path gets used twice. A pause lasts too long. A shape that should have stayed low lifts just enough to betray its outline against pale dirt. To most eyes, it is nothing. To the bird, it is confession. You need to catch this, because they live one way and it lives another. They react, it reads. They scatter, it sorts. They spend themselves trying not to be seen, and in doing so, they become easier to understand. That is why this hunter never looks rushed, even when the ground gets busy. Activity does not impress it. Motion alone does not fool it. In fact, too much movement often makes the answer cleaner. There is a strange kind of pressure in that sky when the air is cold and open and the watcher has gone quiet again. You can almost feel it settling over the field like thin glass. Just a held note. Seed heads trembling. Dry stalks knocking softly together. One shadow passing over brush and then gone. Under that kind of attention, the world below starts choosing badly. Because the bird didn't. And that, beloved, is why calm can feel so threatening to those who survive by confusion. A steady gaze is harder to manipulate than a hungry one. A patient hunter is harder to escape than a reckless one. The ones below keep hoping noise will hide them, but noise only makes patterns brighter. So now the air is still, the field is talking, and the watcher has not spent itself chasing any of it. Which means the next move will not come from urgency. It will come from timing. And timing is where the whole mystery turns from impressive to almost untouchable. Number 8. It does not move when something could happen. It moves when the moment has already ripened. There is a difference. You hear it in the field before you see it. The dry click of stems touching in a breeze, a faint scratch in leaves, the hush that comes right before one hidden path becomes a visible one. The hawk does not answer the first sign. It lets the signs collect. It waits until motion, angle, and opening stop arguing with each other. That kind of timing is a rebuke to anything restless, because restlessness lunges early. Restlessness burns energy on almost. But this hunter has no romance with almost. It can remain high, or settle again on a post, or drift in a loose arc overhead while the ground rearranges itself beneath it. The eyes stay steady. The body stays economical. And somewhere below, cover begins to fail, not because it was weak, but because time revealed where it thinned. You can feel the precision in the smallest details. A patch of shade slides off a run of grass. Damp earth darkens where frost has lifted. A narrow line through weeds gets used once more than it should. What looked protected a moment ago is suddenly exposed from one direction, then another. The bird does not need every condition to be perfect in a grand way. It only needs enough truth to line up. Enough. That is all. And listen to how holy that is. Not greedy, not frantic, not overreaching. Just enough. That is why so many creatures survive the first noise, but not the second stillness. They think the danger passed because nothing happened right away. They relax too soon. They return to the same route. They trust repetition. Meanwhile, above them, the watcher has not forgotten a single opening. It has simply refused to waste itself on the wrong one. You have to understand, beloved, the field keeps offering false invitations. Rustles that mean nothing, flashes that lead nowhere, movement that looks urgent but carries no value. The hawk leaves those alone. That is discipline. That is self-command. That is power with a spine. So when the bird finally commits, it is never because it got excited. It is because the hour, the light, the line of sight, the space to descend, all of it agreed at once. And once a creature learns to trust that kind of timing, something else changes too. It stops being ruled by the ground at all. And once it stops being ruled by the ground, the whole relationship between hunter and landscape changes. Number 9. This hawk is not trapped inside the confusion it studies. That is a deeper kind of freedom than speed. The brush below still tangles, the trails still cross. Damp soil still holds old marks beside fresh ones. But the hawk is not answering the field on the field's terms. It has risen beyond the clutter, and because of that, it can choose whether to descend, whether to circle, whether to wait another full stretch of light without giving anything away. That distance is not coldness, it is command. Listen to the air around it when the lift is good. There is almost no effort in the body at all, just a slight tilt of the wings, a subtle turn of the tail, feathers catching the current like a hand finding the grain of wood. The land rolls below in browns and dull golds, patched with shadow. From that height, urgency starts looking small. The little dramas of the ground lose their power. Sudden movement is measured instead of feared. Noise is sorted instead of obeyed. So this creature can remain so hard to read. It is not reacting from inside the scene. It is studying from above it. The field cannot force a decision out of it. The wind cannot embarrass it into waste. Even the prey trails, bright to ultraviolet sight, do not control the bird. They inform it. That is different. Information is not the same as command, and the hawk knows the difference with its whole body. You should sit with that for a moment, because many things below mistake access for power. They think if they can stir the grass, they can stir the watcher. If they can create enough movement, enough false starts, enough little signs, they can drag attention down into chaos. But the bird refuses. It keeps the height. It keeps the wider map. It keeps itself from being recruited into confusion. And that refusal is exactly what makes it formidable. The world beneath may offer 10 distractions in the space of a minute: a flash near the stones, a tremor at the brush line, a run that stops too suddenly, a trail that doubles back. Yet the hunter is not hungry in a reckless way. It does not lunge at possibility. It remains under its own authority. Now the field is below, the currents are steady, and the signs are not pulling the bird around. They are being weighed. Once a creature reaches that kind of composure, the next revelation is unavoidable. It stops merely seeing patterns and starts becoming a symbol of them. And once it becomes a symbol, you start to understand why this bird has always unsettled people who live by appearances. Number 10. The hawk carries a kind of truth you cannot decorate. It strips things down, not with noise, not with force, but with accuracy. When it hangs over a field in clean silence, all the cover below is tested, just enough for the weak places to show themselves. A gap in the grass, a line through the brush, a pause where movement should have continued. The land does not get to pretend for long under that kind of attention, which is why the bird has such a presence even when it is far away. You may only catch it as a dark cross moving through pale sky, one slow arc over winter weeds, one turn above a fence line silvered with cold. But the effect is immediate. The whole ground seems to tighten. The same air, the same field, the same scattered stems, and yet everything feels more exposed because that watcher is there. It is consequence. A creature built for exact sight changes the behavior of everything around it simply by existing in range. The shadow passes, and hiding starts feeling less reliable. Old routes feel thin. Familiar cover feels smaller. The field itself begins to act differently beneath those wings. And that should speak to you, because there are presences that do not need to shout in order to change a room or a landscape. The hawk teaches that visibility is not the same as revelation. Lots of things are visible in open country: stones, stalks, bare soil, brittle leaves. But revelation is different. Revelation is when what mattered was there all along, and only the right gaze made it undeniable. This bird does that to the land every time it enters with composure. It does not invent weakness below. It reveals where weakness already was. That is why false safety collapses so quickly around it. Not because the field suddenly changed, but because the field was finally read correctly. You can almost feel the hush that follows that realization. Wind moving over feathers. A low creak from wood somewhere under the bird's perch. Sunlight flattening across the ground and drawing long edges out of everything. In that hour, nothing beneath has become more dramatic. It has simply become more knowable. And once a creature becomes known that clearly, something irreversible happens next. Because the hunter no longer has to wonder what the field is hiding. It only has to decide what it will ignore. And once it decides what to ignore, the bird becomes even more formidable. Because selection is its hidden strength. Number 11. The hawk is powerful not only because it can detect so much, but because it refuses to be dragged by everything it detects. That is rare in the wild. Wind moves through grass in 1,000 directions. Loose stalks flash in sunlight. Shadows drift across uneven ground. Old trails cross newer ones. The field keeps offering signal mixed with clutter, movement mixed with distraction. Yet the bird does not bow to excess. It sorts. Watch it from a high branch after a long glide. The chest rises once, slow. The claws press into rough bark. The head tilts, then stills. A whole country of little disturbances keeps happening below, and still the watcher does not spend itself on every one. This is rank. The creature is acting from a higher order than the noise around it. That is why its presence feels so clean. Nothing in it is scattered. The eyes hold their line. The body stays composed. Even the feathers seem arranged around purpose. When it leaves one patch of ground unchallenged, that is not failure. When it lets one motion pass, that is not confusion. It is choosing. It is measuring value. It is proving that awareness and reaction are not the same thing. And that lesson is written all through its shape. Broad wings, steady tail, head locked forward. Built for reading. This bird can cross a wide stretch of air, settle again, and continue the same judgment without drama. One false invitation after another can rise from the field, and still the hawk keeps its own center. Dry weeds hiss against each other. A pale strip of dirt catches the light. A small route appears and disappears between clumps of cover. The watcher sees more than enough and answers only what is worthy. There is dignity in that restraint. The ground cannot bait the sky. The clutter cannot recruit the clear-sighted. Even the bright traces visible to ultraviolet sight do not force the next act. They are weighed, not obeyed. So now you are looking at a creature with range, patience, altitude, hidden vision, and the discipline to leave lesser signals alone. That is why the field cannot exhaust it. That is why the air around it feels different. Not because everything below has become dangerous, but because one presence above has become impossible to distract. And once distraction loses its power, something deeper takes its place. Authority. And authority is exactly what settles over the landscape when this bird enters it with composure. Number 12. The hawk does not need to prove rank with noise because rank is already built into the way it moves. You can see it when the bird returns to a post after a long circle, settled, talons around rough wood, feathers smoothing back into place, head lifting into the wind as if the whole field is expected to answer honestly now. That is what real command looks like in nature. It does not beg to be believed. There is a reason this creature has always carried such weight in the imagination of anyone who has looked up and seen it suspended over open country. It represents a kind of watchfulness that does not sleep on the job, a clean, elevated awareness. The sort that does not need 10 chances because it was present for the first one. And you can feel that meaning without turning it into a myth. The bird itself is enough. The hooked beak catching a line of pale light, the chest marked against the sky, the wings opening and settling with that measured confidence only a hunter of altitude seems to possess. Even its shadow says something before the body does. It crosses weeds, stone, dry ground, and fence rails, and everything under it feels just a little more honest. That is what authority does. It clarifies. Now, notice the difference between this and mere intimidation. Intimidation is loud and short-lived. Authority stays calm. Intimidation wants a reaction. Authority does not need one. The hawk does not waste itself trying to make the field afraid. It simply remains itself with such precision that false safety starts falling apart on its own. A hiding place looks smaller. A familiar route feels exposed. A pause in the grass sounds louder than it did a minute before. That is why so many creatures below seem to betray themselves without being touched. They are not just responding to danger, they are responding to presence. And presence, beloved, is one of the rarest powers in the natural world. To be so aligned in sight, stillness, altitude, and restraint that your very nearness changes behavior below you, that is no small thing. That is earned. That is shaped by design. So now the bird is no longer just a watcher and no longer just a hunter. It has become the kind of presence the field cannot ignore, even when it wishes it could. And once a creature reaches that level of presence, the next thing it teaches is even sharper. It shows you that power is greatest when it refuses to waste itself. And when power refuses to waste itself, it starts looking almost untouchable. Number 13. The hawk does not chase everything it could catch. That is a level of restraint the world below rarely understands. The field keeps offering chances. A flicker near dry brush, a sudden break across open dirt, a nervous movement where shadow meets grass. But it is not ruled by appetite alone. It is governed by worth. Effort matters. Angle matters. Risk matters. Timing matters. And if the moment is wrong, it lets the moment go. That is not lack. That is mastery. You can see it in the way the creature resets without frustration. One pass ends, the wings widen, the body lifts again into cooler air, the eyes stay bright, the chest stays steady. No frantic doubling back, no sloppy dive after a weak opportunity, no performance for the sake of proving it still can. It knows what lesser hunters forget. Every wasted descent costs altitude, energy, and advantage, so it protects its position. Listen to the sound of that wisdom. Wind moving under feathers. A loose stem tapping against another stem far below. The small hush that comes when the bird chooses not to act. Most creatures hear silence after a missed chance and think nothing happened. But something very important happened. The hawk kept its standard. It refused to be baited by movement that did not deserve commitment. This is why it stays dangerous longer than impulse ever could. Impulse burns hot and empties fast. This hunter keeps reserve. It does not confuse possibility with calling. It does not throw itself at every opening just because the opening exists. If the line is poor, if the ground is wrong, if the cover still favors what is below, it waits. Or it climbs. Or it turns away altogether. And beloved, that is the kind of discipline that terrifies a chaotic world. Because chaos survives by getting you to overreach, to drop too soon, to spend too much, to prove what never needed proving. But the bird answers none of that. It keeps its height. It keeps its calm. It keeps the field under observation without handing the field control. So now you are looking at a creature that can see, sort, rise, wait, read, and still say no. That no is part of its power, maybe the deepest part. Because once a hunter stops reacting to every invitation, the whole landscape changes again. And the next truth is not about what the bird can catch, but about what it teaches simply by remaining beyond reach. And when it remains beyond reach, the lesson becomes personal, whether you asked for it or not. Number 14. The hawk teaches by distance before it ever teaches by action. That is what makes the bird so confronting. You cannot pull it down into the field's confusion and still expect it to be itself. Its power depends on separation, not abandonment, not cold pride, but clean distance. Enough height to read clearly, enough space to avoid being tangled in every false signal below. You see that every time it chooses the higher limb instead of the lower one, the open post instead of the crowded branches, the broad air instead of the thick cover. Even at rest, it favors a place that gives vision room. The bark under its claws is rough and sun-dried. Wind moves fuller there. The smell of dust and old grass carries upward. From that position, the bird is not hiding from the world beneath it. It is refusing to let the world beneath dictate the terms of sight. That is a hard word for restless places, because restless places always want closeness. Closer to the noise, closer to the scramble, closer to the little urgencies that drain strength and blur judgment. But this creature keeps answering with altitude, with open air, with a gaze that says, no, I will not trade perspective for participation. And that refusal changes everything. Look at the outline of it against late light. Shoulders lifted just enough, tail balanced, head turning in those deliberate little measures that never look rushed. You can feel the field below trying to keep its secrets, still trying to blur its weak spots with clutter and movement. Yet the watcher remains outside the swirl, and because it remains outside, it can keep seeing what the ground wishes would disappear. This is why distance is often misunderstood by whatever lives beneath it. The lower world reads it as withdrawal. The bird is actually preserving clarity. It knows that if it drops too quickly, settles too low, or reacts too often, the view narrows, the signals thicken, and the clean line between truth and distraction begins to smear. So it guards that line with placement. And beloved, that may be one of the sharpest things about the hawk. It understands that where it stands shapes what it can know. Where it rests shapes what it can resist. Where it rises shapes what eventually reveals itself. So now the bird is seeing better. It is choosing positions that protect what it sees. And once a creature starts protecting its clarity on purpose, the next step is impossible to ignore. It begins to move with a kind of certainty the field cannot explain. And that certainty is what makes the bird look mysterious to anything living beneath it. Number 15. The hawk moves like it already trusts what it knows. It is neither reckless nor proud. Its seeing has been tested by height, by patience, by distance, by refusal. So when it shifts from stillness into motion, there is no argument left in the body. The wings do not debate. The head does not second guess. The whole form answers with one clean decision. That is why its movement feels different from impulse. Impulse jerks. Impulse startles itself. This creature does not. Even when it changes direction quickly, there is a strange composure in it, as if the air had already been informed. A turn over the field, a drop to a lower branch, a rise back into open sky. Every adjustment carries the same message. I am not searching blindly. I am acting from clarity. You can hear that confidence in the quiet around it. Feathers brushing against wind with a soft, dry whisper. A branch giving one short creak under its weight. The small pause after landing, when the bird gathers itself without any wasted fluttering. Nothing about it says uncertainty. Nothing about it says, I hope this works. The whole body says, this line is clean enough. This angle is true enough. This moment is mine. And beloved, that is exactly what unsettles confused environments. Because confusion survives on hesitation. It feeds on mixed signals, weak boundaries, rushed corrections, second guesses. But the hawk does not hand the field that kind of access. By the time it moves, the inward decision has already been made in a place the field could not touch. That is why even a simple repositioning can feel powerful. The bird lifts from one post and chooses another farther down the fence. It leaves one branch for a higher one with better light. It glides across a patch of land it no longer needs to inspect closely because it is already read enough. None of those motions are dramatic, yet every one of them says the same thing. Certainty conserves energy. This is what the lower world keeps misunderstanding. They think certainty has to be loud. They think power has to announce itself. But here, certainty sounds like almost nothing. It looks like measured wings, steady eyes, and a body that never spends more than truth requires. So now the field is dealing with something worse than a fast hunter. It is dealing with a clear one. And once clarity starts moving with confidence, the final turn cannot stay far behind. And when clarity starts moving with confidence, the air around the bird feels different, even before the next decision is visible. Number 16. The hawk does not wait for outside permission to trust what it is already confirmed. That is the edge. So many things below keep adjusting, second guessing, doubling back through the same narrow cover, as if repetition will save them. But the bird is not caught in that loop. It has already seen enough from above, already sorted enough from stillness, already refused enough distractions to know when the picture is complete. That completion changes its whole presence. You can watch it in the smallest shift. The body lowers a fraction on the branch. The shoulders gather. The head fixes on one line through the field and does not leave it. Wind combs the feathers along the back. A dry stem snaps somewhere below, quiet but not quiet enough. The light has turned flatter now, more honest, laying every gap and edge open across the ground. Nothing dramatic announces the moment, and yet the moment is there. This is where the bird becomes almost impossible to challenge, because it is no longer negotiating with the field. The signs have been read. The false invitations have been dismissed. The height has done its work. The distance has protected the vision. What remains is not confusion, not searching, not even suspense in the old sense. What remains is alignment. And beloved, this is why the hawk feels so spiritually confrontational to a restless world. It shows what happens when seeing, restraint, and action all come into agreement. No split inside the body, no leaking energy, no frantic proving, just a clean union between what is known and what is about to be done. Listen to the hush around that kind of readiness. The branch holds. The wind passes. The field, which spent so long trying to blur itself with clutter and movement, suddenly feels exposed in a deeper way. Even the old trails, the faint roots, the signs once hidden to ordinary sight have all led here, to precision. That is why the bird's next motion matters so much. It is not simply another act in the hunt. It is the visible proof of everything invisible that came before it: the patience, the altitude, the sorting, the refusals, the certainty. So now the watcher is gathered, the line is chosen, and the field has no more confusion left to offer. Which means the next thing you are about to witness is not just movement, it is vindication. And that vindication is getting ready to touch the ground. Number 17. The hawk does not move after confidence is built. It moves because confidence is now complete. That sounds small, but it is everything. The bird has already done the hard work in silence. It has climbed. It has waited. It has read the field through ultraviolet sight, through stillness, through distance that kept the noise from getting inside its bones. So now there is no trembling in the body, no loose energy to burn off, no leftover doubt to argue with. You can feel the difference in the air before you even see the motion. The feathers tighten, the tail becomes a finer line, the head fixes lower, and the whole shape leans toward one exact path. The wide circling is done now, the patient drift too. This is the moment where all that quiet turns into intention. And beloved, that is the part the lower world never sees coming. Not because it was hidden, but because it was too clean to understand while it was still forming. That is the kind of clarity that scares confusion. Confusion expects hesitation at the edge of decision. It expects one last look back, one more correction, one more wasted flutter. But the hawk has already made its peace with the field. It needs no permission. It does not need a sign from below. The answer is already held in the body, and the body is about to speak. Watch how the shadow shifts. Watch how the branch empties with one quiet lift. Watch how the bird holds itself for half a breath, perched and motionless, and then gathers everything inward like a drawn line. It holds no panic, greed, or overreach, just a final alignment that says, "This is the opening I came for." And that is why the next movement feels heavier than speed. It carries all the weighting inside it, all the height, all the refusal, all the patience that let the truth reveal itself without noise. Now the field has stopped asking whether the watcher sees. It is asking what the watcher will choose to do with what it sees. And the answer is almost here. Because the air is changing, the line is set, and the hawk has stopped circling. And then it happens. Number 18. The answer does not arrive with noise. The branch gives one light rebound, and it is gone from it. No wasted flutter, no crooked correction, just a clean release into cold air, a line drawn from certainty to earth. For one breath, it seems to vanish against the pale sky. And then the shape appears lower, cutting through the open space it had measured long before this moment ever came. The field tries one last time to be complicated. Dry grass leans, shadow breaks across uneven ground. A narrow trail disappears under brush and then opens again near a strip of bare soil. But none of that changes the line now. The hawk is past debate. It is moving through the very path it had already solved, from height, from stillness, from all those quiet refusals that looked like nothing to the world below. You can hear it only at the end, a short rush of air, the faint brush of wings changing angle, the soft burst of loose seed husks lifting off the ground. Then stillness returns, but not the old stillness. This one carries completion in it. The bird stands low for a moment, gathered and composed, exactly as it was on the branch, exactly as it was in the sky. Even here, after the descent, it is not frantic. It has not become smaller by coming down. It has only proven what the silence knew. That is the vindication. Just a clean path through confusion, followed all the way to the earth. And then, as quickly as it came, the creature lifts again, wings open wide. Dust settles back into the grass. The same field that tried so hard to hide its weak line now lies plain under evening light. A bent stem keeps trembling after everything else has gone still, and that tiny shaking tells the whole story better than any cry could. A moment later, it is higher once more, carried by the cooling air above the fence line, dark against the silver edge of the sky. Below, the frost begins to return to the ground. If you're one of the ones who move with quiet sight, subscribe and stay close. And in the comments, leave this phrase: I rise clean.